My name is Joon-Nie Lau, and with me today is Lynette Chew. Lynette is a partner at CMS Singapore, and she's co-head of the Infrastructure, Construction and Energy practice, handling a wide range of contentious and non-contentious work across Asia. Lynette has been lead counsel in complex cross-border and domestic disputes in Singapore courts, as well as international arbitrations at a number of institutions, including the Singapore International Arbitration Centre here at Maxwell Chambers. On the non-contentious side, she's also been involved in numerous building and infrastructure projects across Asia, notably project counsel to the Marina Bay Sands project from tender to completion. This was about 15 years ago now, as well as greenfield developments of data centers, power plants, luxury hotels and resorts, factories and commercial developments. And before we start the conversation, I'd like to also include that Lynette is a fellow with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and Singapore Institute of Arbitrators, and still the first and only woman lawyer on the list, on the Senior Accredited Specialist in Building and Construction list by the Singapore Academy of Law. And she's also a specialist mediator with the Singapore International Mediation Centre, where we first met in 2022. Well, welcome to the show, Lynette. Now, can you tell us, have you always been in construction law? How did you start out and how did you get here to where you are today?
Well, first of all, thank you, Joon-Nie, for inviting me to this podcast. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. If I look back, I've only started as a commercial disputes lawyer. What was clear to me from inception was that I wanted to be a disputes lawyer. And I guess the first job that I got was a commercial position. So that's how I started. And construction law is actually totally accidental. In those times, I think when we were a lot younger, if you rewind 28 years now, we didn't have a choice on what we did. A lot of times we did a lot of work that our bosses did, our partners worked on. So we typically start with commercial disputes. At a certain point, things just changed and I started working for a partner who did a lot more construction work, and that's how it all started. So totally accidental. I didn't pick the topic.
Accident construction law.
Yes.
You've stuck with it for so many years now. What is it that fascinates you so much about construction law?
I think it's the factual matrix. And with every construction dispute that I receive, whether it is the collapse of the Nickel Highway or the construction of a power plant or it's a offshore wind farm, there's a very distinctly different and complex factual matrix. And that's very intriguing for me to be able to understand sequence of works, engineering concepts, and work in legal concepts and assisting the clients where there's delay in a very complex factual matrix. So I find it challenging, and I often tell this to my trainees. If you can do construction dispute, doing a commercial dispute would be a piece of cake. Only because there's a lot less documentation in the dispute. So it makes it slightly easier, facts-wise, I guess.
You love complexity, I see. Well, you've also had numerous legal accolades, Chambers Asia Pacific, Legal 500, Asia Law, Asian Legal Business. But you're this rare woman in a male-dominated field. It's rather unusual, right? And after so many years, you're still the first and only woman listed on the Singapore Academy of Law Senior Accredited Specialists in Building Construction. The fact that you're a woman in a very male-centered field, is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
I actually don't see it as an advantage or disadvantage. I think in everything that we set out to do, there are always challenges. It's just particularly more difficult in construction and engineering because the clients and their representatives are largely male. This is changing. I've seen changes in the last 5 to 8 years. We're seeing increasingly a lot more women in construction, and that's positive. But I think it helps that I have a very good team My co-head, Kelvin Au, who's always been doing construction from day one. I think he's been a great ally. So very encouraging. It's just someone to bounce off ideas, speak your mind and your fears and complaints at times about how the client responds differently to him versus me. In the process, I think we've created this fantastic working relationship where we could work to each other's strengths, and that's been really helpful in navigating this minefield for me as a woman.
Well, have you encountered any challenges in the course of, even as a young lawyer, perhaps?
There's been many, but I think the one that nearly made me quit practice was the occasion where I had, I believe, a 2-week trial in the High Court, and there's this High Court judge. There were 4 parties, four sets of counsels, all male. I was the only female lead. 4-party dispute. So you can imagine it took so long to get through the witnesses, and I was just not allowed to ask my question. It got really difficult. The judge just refused to and kept interrupting me. Whenever it was my turn, it was very starkly different when the male counsels were asking questions, and he would allow leading questions in re-examination. And when I objected, he would say, "Sit down, Ms. Chew, and stop being a jack in box." And I had clients behind me. I was furious, and it's just difficult.
How did you react?
I sat down and it didn't stop me from objecting, because I think it was transcribed, and I knew from that time he was not going to give me a judgment that was fair to my client. So I was just doing what I needed to do and focus on that and make sure it's in the transcript so that I could process or be in a better position to appeal. And I did appeal, and I got the just results from my client. It was a long process, but I think, to cut the story short, it was difficult in that I wanted to dig a hole and hide in it if I could. It was challenging in a lot of fronts. My clients were behind me. I was the only female lead. It makes me wonder if they felt a male lead would have given them an advantage, and that choosing me was a disadvantage. It was also controlling the anger, because, there must be due respect to the judge and the office, and at the same time focusing on what I needed to accomplish the end goal. So it's a lot of things happening at the same time. I have a junior who's also female, and she whispered to me and said, "I don't think he's going to let you ask anything the way you want it in any way." So,
but you persisted and you appealed, and in the end you succeeded.
Yeah,
so I think tenacity.
It takes a lot to refocus and calm down.
Absolutely. On a happier note, recently CMS fielded a all-woman team in an energy case.
Yes.
And tell us what happened there.
Oh, that was very interesting. This took place, it was a dispute in a power plant, construction of a power plant in Singapore. And what was challenging in that matter was the memorials were exchanged during the COVID lockdown, and timelines had already been fixed by the tribunal. We had no access to printers. We had no access to the office. And we had, I think, 3 months, if I'm not wrong, to finish the defense, memorials, and counterclaims. Any request for extension of time was denied. And so we actually did a lot of the preparation at home. We couldn't have the team together in the office as well. It's challenging, to say the least. But in the end, when we make a second request for extension of time, the tribunal permitted extension to the extent that it would reduce our time for the rejoinder memorials. So it's not as if we could use all the time we wanted. So it was quite pressurizing, and it was fun. At the same time, now that it's all over and we secured a comprehensive win. In the course of that, we also had hearing during a partial lockdown where it was virtual across multi-jurisdictions. We had witnesses in Scotland, Spain, Seoul, Dubai, and Singapore. So it was, and the tribunal, I think part of the tribunal sitting in London. And we worked across, I think, not too bad. We worked from the afternoon to night. The hearing was 2 to 9 or something. And it was good in that we had the morning to prepare and it lasted. So the whole process, we had 3 females in the team. I was lead and 1 counsel and a junior associate at the time. I think the tribunal of 3 was quite impressed. They gave us quite a nice accolade in that for a fully female or woman team in a complex dispute. I think he gave us a testimonial saying that we're a superb team. There should not be any doubt whether women can do a better job or just as well as men in this field. And I think that's been very encouraging for the entire team. And I think it's great because that's just making a point on my part. I just wanted to field the all-woman team and see how we did. And we're happy with the result.
Job well done. Do you feel that, as women in construction, that you have to work, doubly, triply harder to actually prove yourselves?
I don't think it's doubly or triply harder. I feel that perhaps for a woman to be noticed in this sector, it may mean that you have to be very good at what you do. And I believe that everyone, whether it be men or women, we all work very hard in preparation whenever we go into, either a hearing or a trial. But I think that there's no difference in that sense. But I think most of the time, the women are less noticed. I may be the only one that's been accredited as senior accredited specialist by the SAL, but I know of a lot of women who are practicing in this field, but perhaps was not encouraged to apply for the accreditation or felt they do not need to be accredited. But they're still doing very good work, and I do see them on opposing sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, on that point, really about encouragement, encouraging women to step forward, take up roles of responsibility, maybe even leadership. How does your firm support all this?
I think we have quite a good D&I as well as CMS Women program. I think in respect of leadership and progression for juniors, we have rolled out the CMS mentorship program. We had a pilot rolled out quite successfully where juniors, or rather senior associates who are progressing to junior partnership, have a mentor that's been assigned to them. So partners can volunteer to be mentors across the global office. These senior associates will be assigned a mentor from a different practice group and a different office. And this will allow them to have someone to, discuss their progression plans, their fears, things they need to do, how to start BD, what are the baby steps.
Business development.
Yes, and what they should be starting to think about. I think it's been quite helpful. So the mentee that I was mentoring has just made partner last year. So I was quite pleased that she made the jump across.
And how long is this mentorship for?
It's for a whole year, and you're encouraged to have at least 3 to 4 sessions. Of course, they're open to you having more subject to time and work pressures, but yeah, that's about 3 to 4 sessions.
And do these senior associates get multiple mentors over the years, or how does it work?
I think we've only just rolled it out, so we're rolling out the second phase now. And the mentees tend to have only one mentor that is outside their office and outside the practice group, just to give them different perspectives and how things are done in different jurisdictions, perhaps.
That's really interesting. CMS also has a women's network. And how does this work within CMS?
It's actually quite multifaceted. Within the CMS Women, of course, we run CMS women leadership programs. And within the sector, for example, our practice group, construction, infrastructure, and energy practice, we try to focus on women in this sector and run leadership programs where we get speakers in, invite colleagues and client reps to attend. And we keep the workshop small, and we have quite a lot of fun. I think Joon-Nie, you've been invited to one of our workshops. And that actually equips us with the necessary skills and perspectives and strategies to navigate the whole pressures of how to be a better leader.
Absolutely. And you also involve your client representatives as well. So that's also another form of client engagement.
Yes. And that gives us the opportunity to get to know client from a different perspective. You know, most of the time we talk about work, but this is more understanding their challenges and what they face as well within their organizations, and how we can all help each other to overcome it.
So it's professional development as well as personal development. Yes. And in the process, you are also engaging on a different, very personal level as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. The other thing you mentioned is your co-head as well. So the importance of allyship. You know, what do you all do in that respect to encourage also male colleagues to provide that support and allyship?
We actually invite them to these sessions. And a lot of my male colleagues like Kelvin Au, Daniel Tan, and over in London, Adrian Bell, they are all very alive to these issues and very supportive. So whenever they hear that I'm holding a workshop or an event, they would find time to show up and participate. And I think some of them have daughters as well. So I think that gives them some perspectives as well in attending these workshops. And they themselves are already very supportive allies. And I don't think I would have come so far if I didn't have Kelvin always, encouraging me and say, oh, you need to, hang in there, don't give up, apply for the accreditation. And I was like, no, they are not going to give it to me. And she's like, you got to try. I think it's worth a shot, and that's why I applied.
And it's all teamwork. It's about supporting each other, trusting each other, and giving each other that nudge to go for it.
Yes, and his support has been invaluable, I think, and he's also a very generous partner in that we share our work, and depending on who is busier, we put assigned work in that way and ensure that we communicate often, so I understand how the other junior team members are doing in terms of their workload, their mental health. Are they dating or not? Are they having a proper social life, or are they spending all their time in the office? And we do interact in that way and try to spread the work around, and we encourage the juniors to speak to each other a lot more as well. Because sometimes they are so bogged down with their work and in their little desk, just trying to meet deadlines, and our demands and time just escapes them. So we try to, interact and have some team events, or maybe it's just a quick drink or a meal, just to catch up as well. So that's how we keep, the interactions within the team and keep things informal, so that we will be the first to know if something very serious happens or they need help. We want to be the first to know.
So absolutely. I mean, it is a stressful job. It is, you have full professional commitment. You help each other out as a team, but you're also very mindful of your personal well-being, mental health you mentioned. What do you do as personally to de-stress, and how does that help you make a better lawyer?
I try to go to the most remote place I can find so that there's no phone signal. I spend a lot of time in remote places. I enjoy hiking, diving, snowboarding. Just be in nature.
So where do you go?
I've been, last year was I think I've been to the Azores Island, Faroe Islands, and Antarctica. I dived in the Pacific Ocean, Tahiti, Galapagos.
Where they can't find you.
Somewhere where they can't reach me, or I'll be underwater and hopefully not have to, read the emails.
And how does this make you then a better lawyer when you don't read their emails?
I think it gives me time to catch up with myself. Makes me a better person. I think I'm more enjoyable when I'm happy and not stressed. So when I'm diving, all I hear is my own breathing, and I'm weightless in the water. I may be among hundreds of sharks, but it's a very relaxing experience for me, strangely enough. Hiking actually brings me to the mountains and very remote places. I love hiking alone because it gives me time to understand myself, catch up with what I want, my plans. It's not just about work and how I should perhaps plan or undertake my objectives. Yeah, so it kind of slows me down. So I'm not always thinking about the next deadline and the list of things that I've not done and how I'm going to do it within 2 days. Just extracting myself from the usual circumstances and just breathe.
That's really, it's good to take a mental break every once in a while.
I think it's important to know what makes you calm down and neutralize. And if you know what it takes to get to that state, then it's important that you do what it takes to, to de-stress.
Yeah, it's a reset and a rebalance. Talking about rebalancing, arbitration forms most of your work, but you're also a proponent of mediation as a form of appropriate dispute resolution. I think these days we no longer say alternative, we say it's appropriate dispute resolution. How do you think we can make better use of mediation in arbitration to achieve more satisfactory and efficient outcomes for clients and all parties?
I think a lot of times the challenge with mediation is it's knowledge and information. I found that I've had to educate my clients on what mediation entails. They often ask me, why can't I have a without prejudice meeting? And I said, you can, and you're not precluded from having your own without prejudice meetings, but I think it's important to have a trained mediator who will facilitate this process and steer your discussions towards a mediated settlement. And I said I've had very good results depending on which stage you actually launch into the mediation. And I do feel that timing is critical. Depending on how a dispute arises, oftentimes they're not crystallized until after the pleadings. So in order to facilitate mediation, I tend to recommend it after pleadings, so I have a better sense of what the four corners of the claim, defense, and counterclaims may be. The other stage where I would consider it would be after the evidence is in. So it's very clear to the counsels at least what the strengths and weaknesses of the claims are. And I think we would be in a better position to give advice to the clients on what a realistic outcome might be. Sometimes we do it right at the start before we commence the arbitration. That's just not been very successful based on my experience, because parties are still very emotional and adamant that they are right, or the other side's claims are inflated. So it's hard to bridge. But it's not necessarily bad to do a session of mediation or without prejudice. meeting. Yeah, I'm all for settlement, because I think a lot of times clients have no idea how painful it is going to be for them, both in terms of time and money. Should we have to prepare for a full-blown arbitration hearing? Yeah.
And now younger lawyers actually have more in their dispute resolution toolkit. They've got litigation, of course, arbitration, and now mediation. They're more aware of it. Just to quickly wrap up as well, the final word of advice to younger lawyers out there, what would you say to them, and those, especially those keen on a career in dispute resolution?
Do your best, persevere, and be fearless, and do what it takes to get you to that fearless position. So basically, really look into what is making you fearful, and find ways to undo that. And you'll be able to always take a step forward and not stay on the spot.
Well, thank you so much, Lynette. Persevere, be fearless, undo all that is holding you back, and power on and go ahead, fly. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's been In Conversation with me, Lynette Chew, partner at CMS Singapore and co-head of the Infrastructure, Construction and Energy Practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joon-Nie.